Alrighty, we're back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly. It's episode number 506. We're recording live on March the 2nd. Yes, it is now March, and spring is upon us. Preseason baseball has begun. Life is good again. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's a cold day here. We started to get like a false start to spring, and then now we're back in the 30s today. So I'm like snuggled up. But yeah, it is definitely the end of the first quarter and this year's already flying by, but things are pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, things are good too. Yeah, we had a bit of a cold snap the last 2 days. So I think we're probably around 20 today. But apparently tomorrow it's going to be back up to 50 something. So I don't know. That's just how it is. It's March, right? It's up and down and kind of all over the place until it kind of settles into that pattern. But
I
yeah,
also love that we always talk about the weather
yeah,
when we
of course.
speak.
Yeah. So anyhow, we've got a good show for you this week. 4 stories that we wanted to cover off, and as per usual, I'll let Aubriana start us off.
Yeah, well, this is a cool story to kick it off with. Last week we had discussed smart insoles for shoes and using those for help with like dementia patients. And this year we're kind of shifting a little bit, but we're talking about smart clothing in general, which could be useful for people with disabilities. And Google has a system that they are, of course, Google's working on this called Jacquard, depending on how you want to pronounce that.
Yeah.
And it's basically striving to streamline this digital life by turning kind of ordinary things like shirts into interfaces, right? So, this is like a garment technology. So you can kind of think about traditional uses, maybe that you would have like a mobile device for or a smartwatch for, are not, if those aren't available to use for whatever reason, then you've got, the ability to use your shirt or, the smart clothing that's integrated with the Jacquard technology. So, what I found very interesting about this story is that Google's actually partnered here with a local organization. It's called Champions Place to do some of this research. And Champions Place is a shared living facility for adults with disabilities. So, maybe cerebral palsy or something like that. And it's amazing. I mean, I watched the video and I was like a little bit emotional. So if you need like a pick me up or feel good story, check out Champions Place. It's here in Metro Atlanta. And it's amazing. Like these adults that are, in their 30s for the first time are able to live on their own with other adults that have similar, life challenges as they do. And so, they're turning their light switches off and on with, the normal integrations, but also thinking about how they could maybe ask for directions or, maybe just pushing a button on the side of your watch to ask a question or on your mobile device is not as easy for everyone. So like in the beginning of things, when you started thinking about wearable technology, wearable clothing, beyond watches, rings, necklaces, the usual suspects, it was more about probably like athleticism and training and reading your body heat and things of that nature. But I love that we're shifting to how do we help people more and how do we make people's lives better, of a focus. And I imagine that, first of all, I love this story. I think it's great. I think it's super exciting to think about wearable clothing integrating to enhance someone's life and just sort of their, the value of living that they have. And what I also imagine is like, we're just kind of dipping our toe in the water here with wearable solutions. And I imagine that at some point we'll be able to have sensors that we wear that are able to detect, for example, like exposure to an airborne illness, right? Or even changes in our body to kind of alert us. You read things about people still, suffering from things like brain aneurysms and strokes and how like anything that could prevent or have quick reporting can really help, save a life. And so all of these things and being able to kind of sense those before we even sense it ourselves in our own body, or, being able to kind of compile that data and say, this is a warning sign for X, Y, and Z faster than we can diagnose ourselves is just, kind of the future of maybe where we're going. But great story. I think there's a lot to come in wearable technology beyond just, the traditional watches or whatever it is that we're using. And I'm excited to hear more of these stories.
Yeah, I'm very excited by this story, and I think it's I always start off a bit hesitant when it's Google doing things like this because I worry about the data play and what they're ultimately going to do with that. But I think sort of the impetus of this project and the market that they're going after in terms of working with the disadvantaged and you know disabled, I think is really noble, and I think it's a really it speaks to the sort of opportunity that we have to use technology for good, right? And we talked about the shoes last week, and here you have a technology that can be woven into sort of all kinds of different fabrics and different types of clothing, and I think it just opens up this opportunity to do so much more. And as you were talking about, sort of technology or clothing being able to sense, if you will, things in our environment that might be harmful to us before we can. I love that idea. I love that idea, but that early warning system type of view, right? Like when you like we have the earthquake warning and we have the whatever warnings and so on. To be able to have that at a personal level, whether it's air quality or whatever it is, I think those things are really interesting. And Google's like they've been at this type of thing for a long time. I know they've been testing contact lenses that you can put in your eyes that can automatically check for blood sugar levels for diabetics and all kinds of other things that they're working on. So I'm really sort of intrigued by this story, and I think that it really just speaks to especially now when everybody's been pent up for a year in their houses, not going out anywhere, to think about the disadvantaged populations and how much more of an impact that this pandemic has had on them. But then to see that technology can help alleviate some of that and kind of find a pathway out, to make their lives a little bit easier. So I love it, and the Champions Place story is great. I'm thinking, as you were mentioning that, I was like, if we ever get to do Retail Logo in Atlanta again, like this would be a good story to have on stage, right? Let's bring Champions Place up with Google, Jacquard, and let's get them to talk about it, right? So I think that'd be great. So good story. All right, on to our second story. Not as cool, but definitely a major growth area in retail these days is the whole idea of contactless checkout. And obviously Amazon, sort of pioneered a movement with the Amazon Go technology in their stores and so on. And it spawned this kind of wave of technology startups that are trying to build similar types of technologies and doing deals to enable retailers to have that kind of cashierless checkout type of systems. So one of those companies is a company called Standard Cognition. We've talked about these guys before, but they've just announced a fresh set of funding. They've raised $150 million. It's a Series C, led by SoftBank, their Vision Fund 2, and including other investments from CRV, EQT Ventures, and TI Platform Management, as well as SK Networks. So, this is a big cash injection. These guys are growing by leaps and bounds. They've announced deals with Alimentation Couche-Tard, which is a Canadian company up here that owns a lot of convenience stores. They also have the brand Circle K, which is very well known. Compass Group, which does a lot of restaurants, cafeteria type of things in office towers and university campuses and things like that. So they're doing a lot of work in this space. Their goal is to have 50,000 stores in the next 5 years, sort of activated with this type of cashierless checkout type of environment. And this capital will go a long way to kind of help power that. And then sort of complementary to this story is one of their competitors, iFi, which is AIFI, is also doing massive growth right now. So this whole space is really just going crazy. They've teamed up with a company called Wonder Mart, and they're going after a lot of the European market. They're planning to roll out something like 1,000 locations with the iFi technology, and Wonder Mart together alone over the next year. So, this whole industry around contactless, I think, is growing, and I think it makes sense too because the pandemic has taught us, the value of touch free, right? And being able to kind of just take the things that we need, put them in our cart, walk out, not having to have everything scanned or touched by a cashier or all of that. The more you can eliminate those touch points, the better, right? And I think these types of technologies simplify that process, make it easier. And I think we're going to see a ton of this. I wouldn't be surprised if every retailer in the next 10 years didn't have this type of thing implemented in North America at least. So yeah.
Yeah, well, congratulations, obviously, to them for raising that, massive amount of money. But I agree with you. I think this is the way of the future. And, I'm curious, like when you go to a store that offers self-checkout or regular checkout, what do you usually choose?
Um, I'm old school, so I would say up until this year, I was almost exclusively choosing to go to the real checkout with the person. This in the last year, I'm gonna say 70% of the time I've gone to the self checkout now, and increasingly I'm doing that as I get more comfortable, more used to it. Um, yeah,
I agree. So I would say that more than like 9 times out of 10 is probably an understatement that I use, for example, like Target self checkout. Not only because I I typically use like my Target wallet scanning app so I can kind of scan as I go and just do it at the same time. And also because if I ever have my kids with me, then they like to kind of scan stuff. And so it's like a game for them. But I like this also because I think that there's the ability for a loyalty play. So I think about how much work I have to do, like I mean, not that much work, but comparably, right? How much work do you have to do? For example, like if you use a Target loyalty app and you scan to see if there's a discount or a coupon that you can save in your Target wallet, you have to scan everything you put in your cart. And anybody who shops at Target knows that ends up being a lot of stuff every single time, even if you went in for toothpaste.
hmm
So like you're scanning everything and then you're scanning it again when you go check out. So it's like duplicative effort. And I think that, autonomous checking out or having everything in a cart and just kind of walking out with that measurement or, that capability, there's a lot of ability for loyalty as well as for data and measurement, because a lot of times anything that you integrate, you think about I'm trying to remember the name of the Ibotta, you have to scan a receipt.
Yeah.
There's extra effort. So I think that from a loyalty or a data measurement, even for like CPG, the opportunities here to be able to better measure, inventory needs or advertising efficacy is a great tool that can be integrated into that as well.
Agreed. I think, yeah, the more digital you can go, the more, like the sort of the purchase data, like all that stuff that's kind of sort of pulled through on this, the more insights you have, right, into what's going on in your operation. So I think there's a lot of benefits to, implementing these kinds of technologies, the loyalty piece just being one of those, right? Yeah, I like it. I think it's, we're going to see a ton of this, right? It's not, this isn't going away. This isn't a trend or, a fad. This is here to stay. And I think you're going to see a ton of retailers deploy this type of contactless checkout.
Yep. Okay, so let's move to out of home now, and not even digital out of home, but there's a company called Revolution 360, and they are trying to reinvent the street poster industry in a sense. So they're launching a new product or platform called 360 Intelligence, and it's using data in a way that we're very familiar with, right? But in a new way for the guerrilla poster sector, or the out of home marketplace. So this is basically just proprietary planning and reporting tool. It was built by a digital agency called Geronimo. And, we just talked about this, a very similar story about measuring for digital out of home, not that long ago, or just billboards, actually, not even the posters. So this is a very similar story. And this is just bringing, street posters into this like level of sophistication that we have with other opportunities, whether that's billboards, digital out of home, but just, giving them transparency in, reporting and planning tools. So this would, it's basically like a digital methodology, where it's looking at audience profiling across different areas using leveraging that mobile location data that we see, and then providing just kind of a reach-based panel by those users based on like particular products, brands, topics, and probably different times of the day as well that they're in those areas. So, they're just saying this is kind of paving the way for taking something that seems like an outdated marketing method of just street posters into, just more in line with traditional out-of-home formats or digital advertising from a measurement and data perspective, and still, getting that kind of cool character that street posters have. So, this is interesting. Like, we've seen this applied to a lot of different industries lately, and we're just kind of now applying data and for planning, for research, for insights, for targeting, to very traditional methods of advertising like posters and direct mail and billboards and all of these static things. But I think this is a smart move. It's not new, but we probably haven't talked about street posters before that are just like stagnant street posters that aren't integrated with, QR codes or, AR of some sort. So this is a pretty interesting story, and I think it's cool. It's great to be able to measure anything. So I like it.
Completely agree with that, and I think it's it always, when I see stories like this, it brings me back, because when I started the LBMA 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, like, we always thought about this sort of wide cross section of media. And I always looked at this industry in particular and said, hey, like that street poster that, like, somebody slapped onto, a lamppost, is the truest, earliest form of location-based marketing, right? I mean, it's only relevant to the people that walk by that lamppost that see it, right? It's location-oriented in that sense. And so I've always thought about, location-based media and marketing in that context. And so I like that, somebody's actually trying to look and say, how do we apply the principles and the tools and the methods that we have in, more traditional out of home, or even, mobile, and bring that into this environment as well. I think the challenge you have in this environment is that, whereas a billboard or a digital out of home screen or what have you, there's sort of a limited quantity, right, of those, and where those are, and their sort of coordinates and so on. And so it's somewhat easier to kind of look at the mobile, cell phone data and kind of measure who's been around and get counts from that relative to that board. But when you're talking about a street poster, that's a lot harder to do, because there could be hundreds of these in an area, right? So you have to really, think, and build different algorithms in terms of how you measure, what that data actually means. And so I'm interested to kind of see how they, what they come up with in terms of figuring out the metrics around this. Because, I mean, if you've got 100 posters up in a, let's say in Times Square, right? Or, or something like that about, a concert or whatever is coming up. Like, are you measuring just how many people are in Times Square and assuming that, everybody or, a certain percentage has seen one of those posters? Or are you actually looking at, much tighter geofences, around each poster and things like that? Do you even know where those posters are? If those posters get ripped off, whatever, right? I mean, like, there's so many considerations when you're looking at this type of guerrilla street poster type of marketing. But I like that somebody's attempting to measure it. So, like, I'm really, really interested and intrigued to kind of see where this goes and what it looks like, and would love to hear from the folks at Geronimo about it as well. So that's super cool. All right, our final story is about a platform called WaitWhile, which is one word. They've raised $12 million to help retailers manage wait lines. So, the one thing that we've seen, certainly up here in Canada, and I'm sure you've seen down there, Brianna, but, this pandemic, there's put a lot of restrictions on capacity within retailers, like how many people are actually allowed in a store to, enable proper social distancing or things like that. And so, increasingly we have, lineups outside of these stores, with people waiting to get in so they can get whatever they need. And so, somebody's decided to kind of figure out some technology to help retailers manage this process. And they want, to basically see a world, as they describe, where waiting in line doesn't feel like waiting at all, is how they describe it. So they've raised $12 million from a venture capital firm called CRV, which, by the way, is also one of the firms that has participated in the standard Cognition funding. So these guys are very active right now. Maybe if you're out looking for capital, CRV seems to be flush and funding deals right now. So take a look at them. But these guys have been working with brands like Patagonia, Louis Vuitton, IKEA, Applebee's, and others to reshape the wait experience. They say for more than 80 million customers to date. They say they've given back more than 400,000 days that would have been spent waiting in line. So it's all about queue management. It's all about sort of enabling an experience to happen while people wait. And it could even be like, order, while you're in line, and then by the time you get up there, they pick up your products or things like that. So it's about creating experience. It's about creating efficiencies while people wait in line, and creating ultimately a good positive brand experience for the retailer and the customer.
Yeah, I like this. I think this is, especially now that we have shifted to where we know there's a lot of places, most places have like capacity limitations, and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like maybe that's something that's not going to go away in the future, just because we want to measure not only just exposure from a health perspective, but just the experience in the store. And when it's extremely crowded, it's hard to find what you need or get help. And so I think that, from an expectation standpoint, when you're thinking about, especially those stores you mentioned, right? When you're thinking about like a Louis Vuitton experience, you want to be able to have, a really great experience to justify the price tags there. Yes. It's interesting, not that long. It was a few weeks ago. We had a lot of rain here. I mean, for an extended amount of time, and there's just not a lot of places that you really want to go and be inside anywhere with your family. And so we just said, my kids had been asking what's a mall? Like they've never been to a mall. And so there's a huge Mall of Georgia here, not far from, not too far. And so we masked up, and it's it's open enough. Like you feel okay. It's not going to be, and it wasn't too crowded, but the lines for some of the stores, they had really marked out lines, 6 feet distancing. And first of all, I was shocked that there was that many people still out at a mall. I haven't been to a mall in years, but it just, iterates that there is this type of, this is necessary, right? Like waiting is not going to go away. People don't like to wait. So how do you better that experience? And I like that somebody's thinking about that as an opportunity here. So it seems pretty cool.
Very cool. So that's it. That's our show for this week. 4 stories there, a wide array of things going from, wearable technology and data to contactless checkout, out of home industry, and wait lines. You've been listening and watching episode number 506 of Location Weekly. We thank you for your time, everybody. Please reach out if you have story ideas. If we've covered you today, reach out to us. We would love to get inside scoop and more details on the stories we have covered. We just thank everybody for listening and watching. We'll be back next week with yet another show. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.